Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my returning guest, Mr. Chris Foster. How you doing, Chris?
Doing good, Tyler. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for circling back. The world conspires in Calgary. Cross paths. I ran into you last week at our 500 event, which was super fun. The power of sticking with something.
Yeah. I had to go back. Someone was asking me what number I was originally, and I had to scroll so far down your list of podcasts that I gave up. So good for you.
I should, shame on me for not looking. But if you search, Google indexes us very well. If you search Chris Foster and Collisions YYC, it will come up top of the list. And I remember it being a fabulous conversation. So I come to today with some excitement and also some change. Last time we chatted, you were at a large organization here in town, and you've since moved to a new role. And I'm creeping on your LinkedIn, as I am a professional LinkedIn creeper. Senior partner, managing director at Accenture for 2 years now. Holy shit, time flies.
Right. Yeah, time flies. I am now officially, Tyler, the person I used to tell my EA never to let in the building. Right? And
that your gatekeeper kept out. That's awesome.
That's right. I say that with humility because, of course, I have great respect for what all of the big consulting companies do. But you can imagine you get chased around a lot in those old roles. And so I'm on the other side of the fence.
And what was your title before? Was Chief Innovation Officer? Because we're going to play around with the word innovation a bit today. Because it is, right. To call it a buzzword is almost I'm understating. I don't even know if it's everywhere.
It is. I actually apologize when I say AI to people now. I'm really sorry, but I have to talk about AI.
Yes. And AI and what means what. So you were Chief Innovation Officer at a large energy company. And again, if everyone goes on your LinkedIn, it's there to see. But we like to we'll speak in slightly broad terms. So when we do get specific, it could be still general at the same time. And now moving on to the consulting side. So curious, was there a trigger point? Was it a transition? Because obviously those are two very different worlds, as you kind of already joked about and implied.
Yeah, it really is, Tyler, right? And I didn't think I would ever end up on this side, which is nothing, bad about this world. What I realized through some exposure was the stuff I love to do, these companies do for companies all over the world. And, I really enjoyed my time and energy. But now I get to actually talk to nuclear power, and I get to talk to utilities, and I get to talk to railroads, and I get to talk to health insurance companies. And it's really neat to see just the different perspectives of how people are approaching the same problems. So I have been on a very humble learning journey. I would tell you that I had no idea, like most people, how much I didn't know until I came into a big place here at Accenture and realized, wow, there's just a ton of stuff out there.
When you're thinking about the world of, we can play buzzwords, AI, innovation, digital transformation, there's so many ways it can be packaged. And I think they're all true. When you go from sector to sector, obviously subject matter matters, and really understanding, we move freight, we move product, we pull things out of the ground, we educate people, we solve these problems. Is the technology around, hey, we need technology to help us do X, do more with less, be more profitable, maybe disrupt the sector? Do the fundamentals kind of stay the same, or do they really move around depending on the problems and the sector? Or are there some pretty consistent fundamentals that you see that are true that you get to take with you in your briefcase from sector to sector, industry to industry?
I'd say honestly, Tyler, 80% of it's the same, which is not to say you don't need to deeply understand an industry. Sometimes
not to minimize that at all.
Not to minimize it, but the 80% that's the same is, everyone starts with technology, and I don't. And I've learned in 25 years of doing this that the first place to start is, what's the company trying to do? Why are they trying to do it? Why does it matter? And you look at the people and you look at the process first. And sometimes you don't even need technology. And I think that's the thing that maybe my clients find surprising is I'll tell them this isn't a technology problem, and here's how I do it. And actually, you don't even need me, right? You can do this yourself, because that is where most of these problems actually come from.
Interesting. Can you give me a nameless, faceless, but an example of that? Because it's easy to go, oh yeah, nod. But what would be a case where you kind of ran into that and you said, actually, no, don't put the technology hammer away. It's actually a different thing.
Yeah, actually, just literally last week, talking to a client who's having some struggles with reporting, right? And it's, how can AI help me? All this automation and everything else. And the fundamentals are they need to take a look at their systems, because you can only create data from, you can only consume data, I should say, from data you've created properly, right? And
you need you need the feedstock of what it is, right?
Absolutely, right? Yeah, so my advice to them is actually, you've got a smorgasbord of different systems. No one defines the data the same way, so you're trying to report on stuff, but people haven't even got the same definition of what it is. They don't have the same process for around how they create, that information, or how they think about that information. So it's really not a systems issue. It's actually going and doing, unfortunately, work that most companies find a lot harder, which is telling
You
people,
beat me to my point of like, it's
right?
less sexy and it's harder.
It absolutely is, and because you're telling people that are sometimes quite attached to the way they do things that actually we need to change, and people are very good with change as long as you're changing to what they're doing.
Yeah, touche. Yeah, yeah. I'm really on board when you go along with what I'm already thinking. Is AI the diet pill of the business world right now?
I think it is somewhat, but I've been through a lot of these hype cycles, Tyler. Right? That's a Gartner term that they love to use, which I think
Yep.
actually is a pretty good one, because I mean we heard blockchain, right? That's a good example. Blockchain was going
We
to change
did.
everything, and I'm not, I think some people did some interesting stuff with blockchain, but I haven't seen a ton of it, certainly in Calgary.
That
And I
that
think
that
that's been
that felt like the promise was never supported by reality. And if I've run to a few people
absolutely.
lately, and they're like, "Point to me something that actually delivered on the promise," it's pretty slim.
And that's a reality, right? And that's a big part of my job, is trying to help companies, and this is the part I really enjoy, is to say, your strategy is not just about what you will do, it's about what you won't do. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you shouldn't do, right? And which is weird, coming from someone who wants to actually help you and sell you services to come do this stuff with me, but there's a pile of stuff I'll tell you shouldn't do.
But you,
And that
but
hype
you as a
cycle,
consultant also want to set them up for success, or else you're kind of not successful.
well,
It's a double-edged
absolutely.
sword. You got to be really careful.
Yeah,
Going, yeah, yeah, yeah. 6 months later, they go, "Hey, consultant, I
that's
think
right.
you were steered us down the wrong path."
Well, and our reputation is everything, right?
Yeah,
Especially in
yeah,
Calgary.
hundred
I was
percent.
listening to your episode with Deborah Yedlin just the other day, your
Nice.
500th episode. So congratulations again. And I mean, she was
Thank you,
talking
sir.
about that, right? And you were talking about the Calgary, and how you're only ever one coffee away from
Yep.
that next person. And if that person someone's having coffee with was like, oh yeah, that guy from Accenture came in and
There's two sides
was,
of that coffee cup. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
So working, you use that example, that organization, but when your phone rings, is it driven by, oh, it's okay, AI? Like I clearly have these problems. I've been hearing the promise of, and
hmm
the shiny stories, and especially with ChatGPT, like everybody, it's a household. Like
that's right.
everyone has
Yeah,
access now. Forgetting
yeah,
like that was around, and I was talking to my friend Tina Mathis, and she talked about some of the work they were doing with Watson years ago, when
that's
nobody
right.
wasn't a mainstream word. Is that almost hurt us and helped us at the same time, having it so mainstream and so perceived to be easily digestible? Like my kids are on it. My God, I must be having to use it
hmm
as a leadership team.
the number one question I get from boards and executive teams that I meet with here in town is, there's almost a desperation, Tyler, when they
Mm.
ask. They go, "Can you tell me what's real, please? Like,
Yeah.
what's real here? Like, what should I be paying attention to? What can I ignore?" And I do think, we just talked about the hype cycle, and we talked about blockchain. I do think AI is different, right? And
Okay.
and it's easy to say that because everyone thinks the new thing is different. But when you see, 6 months ago, if I said to you agentic AI, would have all said, what is that? Like, it wasn't even a thing. It's moving
Yeah.
so fast, and you are starting to see it show up in real life. And one of my favorite examples is the transcribe technology that they've now got in a doctor's office, right?
Yeah.
And so you've probably seen this, or you've certainly heard about it over the years. And this is, again, it's what I love about this is it's something that universally connects us all, because I don't all of us have been to a doctor, right? Hopefully once a year for our physical, but maybe sometimes more. But anyway, if you've been to a doctor anytime in the last 20 years, you've had the experience where they spend most of their time typing on their laptop rather than
Right.
talking to you, and it's nothing, not slamming the doctors. That's what they had to do. The reality was they had to
Well, there,
capture
there
the
was a, there was a
information.
there's a system that was created that they had to
That's right.
participate in, and it
Yeah.
required that action. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in case your guests don't know what's actually happening now, and I actually saw a demo of this, Microsoft demoed it quite a few years ago, about 3-4 years ago, but now it's mainstream. So now what the doctor can do is put their phone on the table and have an entire conversation with you. They don't need to turn around and look at their laptop once. They'll say, "Tyler, what's going on? Oh, my knee's hurting. Oh, well, how's it
Mm.
hurting? And what's your range of motion? And how did you do it?" And they have a whole conversation with you about it, while the phone is capturing all the notes. And so when they're done, it writes up the best clinical. Now, this doctor couldn't write such a good note, right? It's a beautiful clinical note. But what it's also doing is it says, "Hold on, I'm flagging for you here that you said you're going to prescribe Tyler codeine, but you can't. Tyler's allergic to codeine." Oh, right, okay. So it's acting as well as an assistant. And the other part, of course, that it can do, I tell people, is that AI has read every clinical study, every drug trial, everything there is to know in the medical community. And no matter how great your doctor is, and I'm sure they're wonderful, they have not, right? They have
No,
not.
and that's where the human factor is, like outsourcing the part that humans are maybe not the most effective at, but the bedside, but then allowing them to do medicine
That's
or
right.
to be the practitioner. That's an interesting paradigm about, getting to do what maybe they signed up to do in the first place. And we're speaking in generalities, but I think that's a warmer way to think about it.
Absolutely, Tyler. Yeah, I mean, so you
Yeah.
think now that AI is saying, I heard Tyler mention these 5 symptoms. Here's a case study that, doctor, you should go take a look at. But you can see, you said it, better bedside manner. They're now talking to you. They're not looking away on their laptop. They're seeing more patients. They're going home to their own families at the end of the day because they can get more done during the day. But I really like what you just said, because it's something I actually talk about a lot in the corporate world. That doctor did not go to 7 years of medical school and spend all that money and time because they like writing clinical notes or prescriptions or sick notes. They didn't. And when I apply that to our world, I go, how many engineers went to university for all that time because they love wrangling data in spreadsheets? And that's
As
what
fun
a
as
lot of them do,
as fun as you made that sound.
right? Yeah, I mean, it sounds
So
wonderful,
is
but
this,
it's true.
hearing you talk, I'm hearing this optimism that, the promise of technology making our lives better, like from literally watching the Jetsons as kids. But we got these devices that seem to eat up more of our time. But all of a sudden what I'm hearing you say is like, actually, maybe this technology does allow you to go back to what was the core reason you did the thing. And we're talking about more professional, like I went to school to do the thing and now I'm spending most of my day doing this other thing. And that's what actually burns
That's
me out. That's what actually crushes my
that's
soul.
right. That's absolutely, Tyler. I think that's the optimistic side, because so many people are focused on it's going to take all the jobs away, and
Yeah.
and there are realities to that. I was sat next to a lawyer at a partner in a law firm here yesterday at breakfast, and he was talking about how they're only hiring 1/3 the number of interns now, because research that used to take 2 weeks or 6 weeks takes a day.
An afternoon.
And it takes an afternoon, and so there is a reality for sure. I'm not dismissing the idea that obviously there's going to be a transformational effect on the workforce, but there is a positive side. And one of the examples I was giving someone the other day is, if you think about how audit is traditionally done, it's traditionally done by taking a sample of a process, a sample of expense reports or a sample of invoices, and that team goes and looks for things that they can find, and usually does a good job. But the company doesn't have the resources, the time, the money, the people to do 100% of that. But with AI, they can, right? With agentic AI, what's going to happen is that you'll keep the same number of people, but you'll do 100% of the work. And so I've seen a lot of talk about this lately on podcasts and other things, where the things that you're not able to get to, that's the 90%. You're going to go do all that other stuff. There's 90% with AI that you're going to go do that you don't do today because you just couldn't.
It's just not feasible. But that the value equation that drives back into the organization through just getting rid of loss and slippage, like in a reporting environment, an audit environment. I remember years ago, one of my first jobs, I worked at this canning factory. It's a really good job to make you not want to do that job for the rest of your life. But I remember one day they were just dumping pallets and pallets, and it worked for Green Giant, and it was corn. And somebody had done a spot test and found a piece of a bird. So they're like, well, we don't know where the rest of the bird is. So we have to scrap 20,000 cans this way and 20,000 cans that way, because I guess that's the time that bird would be dispersed. But if you had, image technology, and you like, that could have completely, like, the amount of waste, and eventually passed on to the consumer, because you have to pay for what it took for your can, because we scrapped 50,000 cans as an example. But if you apply that across all levels of corporate, ultimately that will better return for shareholders, which is important. And ultimately it'll maybe stop this constant drive of the consumer having to pay more, because you pay for all those inefficiencies somewhere along the line. At the end of the day, somebody pays for it, right? Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's only got one place to go, right? And I think, again, the optimistic side is, I think what companies got to watch out for is that in the war for talent, the people that get to go use AI to take away those parts of the job that you don't like, versus people that are still doing it the old way, there's going to be a push. The best talent will go to the places where they get to really spend their time using their engineering degree, their marketing degree, their business degree.
It's really pushing us to that lifelong learner, the always challenging, not to be self-serving here, but staying curious, which is like, when I'm not curious is usually when things don't go as well. And I'm like, okay, well, that feels a little bit scary. I'm going to unpack it. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to watch a YouTube. I'm going to find some information about it. It usually gets less scary. But if I don't go do a little digging, it sometimes entrenches me, and I dig my heels a little bit more. And I found that usually doesn't lead to better outcomes.
It's fascinating you say that, Tyler. I mean, we all know we live in a world now where you can almost do anything. I mean, I'll give you an example. I I moved out to an acreage as part of my midlife crisis recently, and I have a little garden tractor. I call it a tractor, but my friends with real tractors laugh at me. So it's a lawnmower with with bigger wheels that you sit
Yep.
on. But anyway, I've never considered myself someone who was in the slightest bit mechanical. But with the help of YouTube, I've now changed the oil filter. I've
Amazing.
fixed the battery. I've changed the mower blades. I've taken the deck on and put the snowblower. Like I do all this stuff. Like we're one click away from finding out how to do anything. It's quite a fascinating world.
That's such an amazing example. And you literally apply that to absolutely anything. We want to get off this call and learn about quantum computing or learn how to change the oil in our lawn tractor. That video is equally accessible and probably equally good quality.
Absolutely.
Just to pick two, those to me were the most extremes I could come up with at short notice.
Well, yeah. I mean, so some of the applications are fascinating. I'll tell you, I use AI now every single day. And typically what I use it for is to sort of augment or get me going on some research for something. Give me some ideas, what I should think about. I've got
a thinking partner, a thinking amplification. Mm-hmm.
You betcha. I mean, obviously within Accenture, we've got some crazy good tools that help us do this now, and they're building and investing billions and doing more and more of this every day. And so, you can go in and, in our world, it's, creating a point of view on a PowerPoint deck for someone now takes, an hour. That could take many days before, and of course
with reference sources, with citations, with
absolutely,
there's just more weight to it now.
You betcha. I mean, one of the hardest things in a lot of clients, I used to be one very much where you want, well, who else is doing this and what's the use case? Tell me a story about who else has done this and how it went and what went well and what didn't go well, and that and you've got to go find that information. But I find some people, it was interesting. I was at a board meeting recently, Tyler, and I actually was trying to I was sharing a little bit. I don't know how the conversation got to AI, but I said, "Hey, I used AI to prep for this meeting." And actually, if any of our audience have not tried it, you can go to the Google tool Notebook LM. It's pretty fascinating, right? You could, I see you nodding, so you've used it.
The first time I used it, it blew me away. Actually,
absolutely blows you away.
It literally blew me away.
In 30 seconds, for your audience who doesn't know, you can go in there. You load up some sources. Let's say you're interested in the company. You just reference the sources with a link, and then you can do all kinds of crazy things. I mean, it'll write you a briefing note, it'll write you a quiz if you want to go, test your team and have a fun way of learning. But the really blow your mind stuff is that you can click a button. And sorry, Tyler, this we're talking about AI replacing jobs. So
I'm aware. I used it for exactly what you're saying.
So you click a button and it creates a podcast. And the first time I heard that, it absolutely melted my mind because it's a man and a woman, or the man and woman voice, going backwards and forwards, talking in a very conversational way. And if I didn't know it was AI,
they're super likable.
they're very likable. That's the thing.
They're
I
very
actually
likable.
like these people, and they're not real.
100%. Yeah. I put in an article I wrote, and to listen to two other voices, I want to use the word people because we can't help but humanize things. That's one of the risks we have to be careful of, because like a good Disney, we love to give a lamp human characteristics because then we like it more. That's the danger, I think, on some of this, but that's another, we'll save that conversation for the end of like when the robots come and take over. But listening to them talk about an article that I'd written in a third person, like, I really love the way Chisholm did this.
Yeah,
and I got enthusiastic about my own content. I'm like, my wife's like, what are you listening? And she started listening. She's like, are they talking to you about something you did and telling you how awesome you are? I'm like, this is a weird thing. This is actually, you could really fall in love with this really quickly.
You could, maybe this is a helpful tool for mental health. We can have people, if you're having a bad day, go load up a bunch of stuff about yourself and create a podcast where they sit and talk about you for 20 minutes and make you feel good.
You know what? I need some allies. I need some sponsors today. I need someone who's going to give me pump my tires. But so you said it took like the push of a button. The time and the turnaround and the instantaneous was mind blowing.
It is.
I recommend everybody go play around. Go be curious. Play around.
Be curious. And by the way, it's 5 minutes because everyone's like, oh, I know I should do. I'm like, it's literal 5 minutes will give you this experience of understand. You'll end up curious. And I'll tell you, when I went to that board meeting and I was kind of showing them, the reactions were a little bit interesting. Like there was people who thought I was cheating. Right?
It's I was just going to use the word cheating. Yeah.
Well, you didn't do all the work of like reading this 100-page document, and you go, I can see where they're coming from, but I think the parallel is the calculator, right?
Yeah.
When that came in the 60s, or I think it was the 60s, I don't know. But when it did, people were saying, we're going to raise a generation of people who don't know how to do crazy complicated math. And I think that's probably true. But what it's done, of course, it's freed us up to not spend an hour doing that math longhand on a piece of paper
Yeah.
and just type it into a calculator and we get the answer in 5 seconds. And we then take that knowledge and apply it up the value stream to something else, right? And that's the point I was trying to make. And I try and make that with a lot of people. It's like, look, I came to this meeting better prepared than I think I've ever been because I used the podcast and listened to it while I was driving to the meeting to reinforce my understanding, my learning, and oh yeah, okay, I've got to remember to talk. We need to talk about X. Um, so if the outcome is I'm prepared for the meeting, I think I did it better than all of you. But how I got there is controversial.
And that's interesting. It's controversial for now because there's a new generation that would actually think you were ridiculous if you didn't do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's our leaders of the future. Like I appreciate sometimes hanging out with some of my friends are a bit older and I don't think this and I don't think that. I said, I love you. And it actually doesn't matter kind of what you think. This is where we're going. I don't need that. I'm like, no, you don't. But I guarantee my nephew isn't going to have the same roadblocks about it at 21 that you have at 52 mentally.
Right.
And I think that trend, and we've always gone through this and we've always had innovation cycles and change cycles. The speed of this, I think, is what really is adding a variable.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. I mean, and the sad part is it's a definite cliche, but and it will never be slower, the pace of change, than it is today. And you're seeing that. I mean, the way that AI is moving and the things it can do is frankly a bit ridiculous, but also a bit scary. So, you've just caught up with how to write a good prompt in ChatGPT, and that's so 2024 now. Right.
It is.
And you're like, what?
It's months and weeks, not years in terms of stuff. Or days.
Literally.
And I'm way over here looking in. If you're really at the forefront of it, you're already quote unquote years ahead of some of us that are just consuming what's kind of hitting I read a book once about DARPA, which is the science branch of the Pentagon. It's a little bit of but they said basically when we're hearing about it, that was something they did 20 years ago. Because by the time it hits the mainstream and, that's an extreme cycle, but just to think about, oh, wow, cutting edge technology. Yeah, they did that 15 years ago. It just finally made it out or kind of was declassified. Totally. And you think of everything around the world, technology innovation, there's a lot of things moving at that pace that we're going, oh my God, bleeding edge, but it's already so far past that. Which but again, I think this ties back to, holy shit, what do we do as leaders? What do we do as boards and executive and leadership teams to feel like we're keeping up, but not... I guess let's go back to your question. I'm sorry, man. I'm thinking out loud. The what is real part. We've had a few playful examples, and we fanboyed a little bit here, you and I, on some of the things that we find just mind blowing. But when you're sitting with an executive team, how do you filter the what's real versus what problem they're solving versus just this like insane pace of change? How do you balance those out as the consultant who I've now hired to have the answers?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Tyler, because, in my former life, spending 25 years on the other side in industry, I remember many times having a vendor come and talk to me about the latest and greatest, this is the next big thing and you need to get on this thing. And I would look at them and they would have this great story. But when I asked how I should get there, right, it's like you painted this picture of this beautiful tropical island and there's coconuts and white sand beach and it's beautiful. You sold me. I want to go. And then I go, okay, how do I get there? By the way, I've got Windows XP on my compressor stations. And they look at you in horror and you never see them again because they don't have a journey for you to sort of get there. And so a big part of what I do, I call it like the client intimacy. It's like you got to meet people where they're at. Right. It's no good going in and preaching this big blue sky. I mean, it's interesting. I'll go in and riff with anyone all day about, what's possible and some of the really
you got to sell a little bit of hope and dreams. But if that gets squashed in the next sentence, then it really defeats the purpose. Right.
That's right. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, I love to talk to them about, some of the things we've already talked about here this morning that, this really is what's possible and what's happening. And it's mainstream. As you said, your kids are using it tonight. They're creating podcasts in seconds. But how do corporations? I mean, corporations, remember, the experience for a long time has been that the experience you have on Sunday night before you come to work is actually very different than the experience you have on a Monday. And it drives people bonkers, right? Because on Sunday night they can download an app to their iPhone and they can walk around their garden and use the phone app to identify what flowers growing in their yard and all this kind of stuff. And then they get to work and it's very much sort of 10 years ago type technology in a lot of cases, right? And so when I talk to companies, you've got to take away that sense of being the overwhelmed. And I always start, like I said, I don't start with the technology. Yes, we can riff about it. I'll share the cool stuff with you. But when we want to have a real conversation, let's talk about what matters to your company. Because there's a lot of places where I'll say, look, don't bother. I mean, it's not worth the effort. Just do it the way you're doing it. Because the investment of time and money and people is It's not worth it. So what really matters to you? And obviously in our industry and the industries that surround us mostly downtown here, it's molecules and getting them out of the ground and putting them in pipes and making sure that is absolutely the safest it can possibly ever be, and the most reliable it can ever be, right? And you've got big budgets that go to asset maintenance, right? Billions a year for a lot of companies. So what can we do there to make sure that everyone goes home not just alive every day, of course, but with in the same condition they came to work that day? And how can we make sure that our communities are safe and all those things? And how can and so you start to look at, okay, so here's the places where this would make a difference, and those are big problems. I mean, you talk about asset maintenance, that's not a 3-minute conversation, that's a massive topic. So the next thing is to break that down into some more tangible parts, right? And I do that a lot when you have a very complicated process for doing something. You say, okay, let's take a piece of it and see if we can make a difference to that, like a bottleneck. Look for a bottleneck. Look for pain.
Look for friction.
Right. Yeah. For example, I had a company say to me, look, we struggle. Our supervisors want to spend more time in the field with the people who have the wrenches in their hand, right? It's really important from a safety, from a culture perspective, and just from an understanding what's going wrong, but they're held back. So what you need to do is, well, what's holding them back? Like, what are the activities?
Well, it's the doctor taking notes versus it's similar, right?
There
Very
we are,
similar.
right? We're full circle now to say, well, hold on a minute. This is 6 hours of their week that I can now take away and maybe even do better and actually improve a process around that and free them up so that they're actually out with their people.
I like that. And a couple of terms I've been playing around with lately, and I was at Mesh a couple of weeks ago, and one of the speakers, she really talked about also framing what is process improvement and what is innovation. And like technology, that's almost secondary. Like, yes, technology will be able to influence here. How much? Because what I heard you say, that to me sounded almost more like process improvement versus just labeling everything with innovation, which I feel we're maybe a bit guilty of, the royal we in our society today, of calling everything innovation. Where a lot of organizations, I talked to my wife this morning, who's at a junior oil and gas company. She goes, most of what I do is process improvement. But she goes, if I think about the way we tie in wells 5 years ago till now, somebody innovated the heck out of how we did that. And now we do it completely different. But my day is usually process improvement, if I was to label it. We just kind of were having this dialogue this morning before our chat.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Tyler, and I think my honest answer is, I think people obsess about and worry about it far too much, right? Because I think what may have happened in your wife's example is that the continuous improvement of the process and the cumulative effect of everyone making changes added up to something that ends up looking like a big innovation. But I think when people say the word innovation, they sort of intimidate themselves, because we're all thinking the home run. We're thinking Steve Jobs standing up with the iPhone in 2001 or whatever that was.
Yep.
And, that's a high bar, right? Most of us are never going to do that in our lifetime, and so it becomes off-putting. And it's like, well, innovation isn't for me. I tend to think of innovation as a much lower level. To me, it's finding any better way of doing anything, and that could be how you get to work, right? It could be how you cut the grass at your house, right? I mean,
I've tried 3 different ways to work, and this one is 30 seconds faster. So now I have a new and better way of doing things.
You bet, right?
I like what you said about how exclusionary and how alienating it can feel for people. It's kind of like playing with the word creative. Oh, I'm not creative. Well, think about, what do you mean? Like, creative in how you solve problems? You mean you don't paint? Like, I think sometimes not sometimes, words get very ubiquitous, and the definition does matter. And we can self-select out of an opportunity because you're right. It's perceived as like, well, I'm not going to invent the iPhone, so I guess I can't call myself innovative. Wait a second. If you're a subject matter expert in anything that has a repetitive cycle to it, there's opportunity for you to be innovative, i.e. improve the process.
Absolutely. I think if you're willing to find a new way to do something, and you use the word curiosity a couple of times, Tyler, if you're curious about a better way of doing something and you find a better way of doing something, you are innovating.
I like that. Feels so much more inclusive and so much more. The bar just got lower, and it got a lot more. The innovation team is doing this, or I'm at an innovative company, and I don't know if I feel that way. And that's an interesting label to play around with. I used to have a creative director, and he always used to say, "Get hung up on the words, Tyler, because the words matter. Because the words that mean something to you mean something else to someone else, and that will define whether this is successful or not as a messaging strategy or something to that."
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to say to my teams, look, just think of it this way: if we can look back in 3 months and say we're doing it better than we did 3 months ago, and then in a year look back and say, oh, we're doing it a lot better than we did a year ago, that's great. right? So just break the problems down. As humans, those big elephant-sized problems can seem overwhelming. So the old adage, eat it one bite at a time.
Yes. When you're working with these large organizations, is there a willingness? Is there that, yeah, we're going to look at this big complicated process, but we're going to pick up this piece and that piece. Does that palatable? Is that more successful? Or is there sometimes, the board's challenged us to be innovative, so we got to do something big or we're not going to be able to report in that? Or is there, let's actually get a whole bunch of small wins so that we actually have some W's?
Yeah, so it actually depends, and it depends very much on where senior leadership's at, right? If the
Yeah.
CEO is coming in and he or she wants a full-scale transformation, then you're going to get that big, let's go look at everything, right? And now you're talking a mega program. If that support isn't there yet or that awareness isn't there yet, what I'm working with, senior people within the organization, but not the very top.
Okay.
And I'm telling them to break it down and show people. And I've actually heard a lot of, I chat with a lot of the innovation people in various companies here, and that's what they kind of do. They squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube so that you can't not know anymore, right? As a tactic. And I know someone who in town, I won't mention their name because they haven't said I can, but I know what they did is they actually used that Notebook LM tool we talked about a minute ago, and they created a podcast of their company results and they sent it to all of the executive team, right?
And they got a variety. Well played.
And I'll just self-confess that I went home that night, and that was the first time I used Notebook LM, was after nodding furiously like I knew what he was saying, and then went home and went wow, and that was my kind of wow moment. But anyway, from the team he sent it to, he got a range of reactions. 10% who were like, okay, we need to do all of this tomorrow, let's go, like, stampede. 60% probably where you and I sit, who are like, this is really cool, I have a few questions, but this is interesting.
But
and then
I'm now more curious than I was 5 minutes ago, so that's good. That's a win.
Right. You've woken me up. My mind's kind of blown, but I need to know more. And then some people who are sort of at the bottom, kind of fetal position in the corner, just like, this is just too scary, like, what's going on here type thing, right? And you're going to see that, right? That's the change management part. We talked about it earlier. It's not about technology.
That's a bunch of humans having a messy experience.
Yeah, it is. But what's happening is you can't now not know that this is possible, and that's the tactic that this person's
can't untake
using.
the red pill or the blue pill or whatever the joke is.
You can't, right? And so people who are doing this, are actually going off and they're doing things, because we talked about before the false promise of things like blockchain and other technologies where the hype cycle. So you have to burst through that
metaverse,
bubble.
like, let's go through that.
Right.
Let's rhyme them off.
Exactly, right? There's so much stuff. Words don't penetrate that perception of hype, but showing them a podcast that you made in 5 minutes about the company results
about something that they can relate to and that they know well.
Absolutely.
That's really what makes that work, right? Because like, I can listen to something, and if I don't know enough about it, I don't know if it's good or bad. But if it's subject matter I really understand, and then it gets delivered to me in a way that goes, wow, that's actually really bang on. That's even that was a good play. Whoever there's influence, and then there's really creating change, right?
Yeah, this same person actually did another interesting one where they downloaded instructions on how to make a paper airplane, and they videoed themselves making the paper airplane, loaded it up into an AI tool that said, oh, Tyler, you in step 6, you should have folded the wing in, and you folded it out. And you think about the application of that, right? Even go back to my silly messing around with my lawn tractor on the weekend, being able to have it video me, and I'm getting frustrated, which always happens because I've hit a point where I don't understand what I'm doing, and being able to go back to the AI and it says, well, you're turning that the wrong way, like you've put it on backwards, or you've whatever it is that you've done. I mean, you start and you think about that in the corporate world, you think about that for our engineers and our people with wrenches.
You layer that
in
with augmented reality and the HoloLens, and like I've got the HoloLens on now, and I'm doing something, and literally now it's not even a third party advisor, it's AI watching me saying, oh, I'm an expert on this process, because you're right, it memorized the manual, it memorized the tech specs of the compressor unit you're working on, and now it's giving you visual cues by seeing what you're doing. Like that sounds like sci-fi, but it's not.
I think that's the thing, right? We all grew up, you and I are a similar vintage.
Yes, similar. Yes, we are.
Similar, but we grew up with this in our science fiction shows, and now here it is. It's reality.
Hey, the tricorder for any of the Star Trek geeks on here is our iPhone. Like, come on, it's like
that's right.
It's amazing when you look at some of that. And here we are slipping back down. You said fetal position. And I think let's not overlook that. This is great. You and I were all, wow, listen to these guys, tech bro out on this amazing technology and all the things. I'm overwhelmed. This is actually burning me out. Oh my
Hmm.
God. Like,
Hmm.
how much more can you expect me to do in a day? Are you running into leaders in your journey that wear this? And I'm resisting using the word mental health because it almost gets overused sometimes. But
Hmm.
but let's use it. I shouldn't say that because 5 years ago we never even wanted to talk
That's
about
right.
it.
Yeah,
So
we
we're
didn't.
not in the. But it means so many things to different people. Just this sheer overwhelm and innovation fatigue and change fatigue, that shows up a lot with like, oh, I can't keep up and I'm not good enough and I'm behind. And humans,
Hmm.
we can start telling a really, and leaders aren't immune to that narrative, right? Sometimes they're looked at, oh, they've always got it figured out. But inside, there's some other narratives going on. I'm assuming you run into some of that when the doors are closed and the real conversations come out. Mhm.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I didn't mean to use the word, fetal position flippantly at all, because,
Mm.
a lot of people that know
No,
me,
I thought
know
I
I'm,
thought it was a valuable thing to say because any self-respecting entrepreneur can recognize occasionally being in the fetal position about how you're going to solve tomorrow's problem.
yeah, I mean,
I,
but
I
I
I
think,
think that's an honest. I think it's very honest. Mhm.
yeah, and but to your point, I think, you mentioned referenced before, things are changing in weeks and months. And, I'll tell you, even in my role, finding the time every week to keep on top of what's just happened and what's, and do my own filter on, okay, do I need to pay attention to this? Is this
Yeah,
something
yeah,
I should follow? I should understand. It is overwhelming, right? It is overwhelming. And I think we do need to keep track of the human element as we go through this. And you said it 5 years ago. It was people weren't talking about mental health. I've been on two panels just this week, kind of coincidence. They were back
oh,
to
right on.
back, but talking very openly about, one was on men's mental health and one was at Woods Homes talking about their journey and what they do.
Hmm.
So there is a much better dialogue going on. But this sense that I'm falling behind and that, oh my goodness, this consultant just came in and told us that all this stuff's going to change, and that's it is frightening for people, right? And there is that we talked before about the fear of job losses. It's very real. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have experienced it.
Are you seeing it in your journey? Obviously, probably, I'm guessing, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Working with
Hmm.
more mid to senior level teams, a little bit older, a little bit different stages of career. Like I'm thinking if I'm 30 in my career in large corporate, or if I'm 55 or 45,
Hmm.
but I know it's not just age, it's mindset and where I'm at. Like, I want to be careful using age as a factor because I don't agree with that. You can be in whatever age and be
Hmm.
like, I'm super excited, I'm into this, to like, whoa, no, I kind of like things the way they are. And I think that's just being human, right? Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think we said it before, you've got to kind of meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah,
Understand what,
yeah, for sure.
and people's first reaction is, any change management person will tell you, no matter who you are, the human reaction is, what does this mean to me? Right? What
100%.
just changed in my world? Who moved my cheese and where did it go? Right?
Great reference.
Yeah.
The book that everyone should lead somewhere in their journey because you're like, just nod and go, which mouse am
Hmm. Hmm.
I?
Right?
Thinking about that from the perspective of like just being curious and playing around, and it does, I think, and tell me what you think on this. Like, it's not just what you do at your job. Like, this is infiltrating all of our worlds. And like what you said, like what my world looks like Sunday night is maybe very different on a Monday
Hmm.
morning. But the
Hmm.
freedom I have to explore and play around in maybe a safer environment. And even we've joked about this as we're a small organization with very technology centric, like our team loves this stuff. But some of
Hmm.
our clients are big multinationals with governance. And I said, they're like, we're quick and we can move fast. And they're governance heavy and very risk averse and very like, you can't just go
Hmm.
grab some random LLM and pump client information into it. Like there is an
Yeah.
interesting balance between what you have to do inside the sandbox for just governance, security, safety, privacy, versus maybe as an individual citizen, you can play around a little bit and go try Notebook LLM and upload your,
Right.
your favorite blog and get them to do it that way. How much do you recommend, or do you see that balance between playing around and making the time and hopefully having the curiosity versus sometimes actually having to play it safe because you're inside a structure that has a governance and safety structure, security and privacy that's real and should be there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll jump onto that. I'll tell you very quickly first that, back to the human element and how people deal with the change. I remember a town hall getting a question from someone saying, it's very dispiriting, Chris, that you continue to talk all the time about continuous improvement. What's wrong with how we do it now,
Oh,
right? And it actually threw me because just the personality that I am, I'm always thinking about how to do it better. And what I fail to appreciate, and I'll say this with full vulnerability as a leader, is that people need the pat on the back and the kudos and the recognition, the validation that what they've done is very good, right?
does
And
he not know I'm working
sometimes
my ass off now?
that's right. He's
Yeah, yeah.
already talking about doing it better, and I just made it better. And So I think it's a message
Let
for
me hang
leaders
out
as
on
you
the
go
island
on
for a
this.
few minutes, Chris, before you sell me on another
That's
island.
right. You just climbed this mountain and you're already looking across the valley at the next mountain. Like, can we just sit and have our
Mm.
sandwiches first? So I think for leaders, there's a message there about just being careful that as you talk about AI and changes and improvement, that you're not leaving people behind in a mentally that they haven't felt, they feel like it's an attack. It's an attack that they're not doing it well enough. But to your question, Tyler, about how do
That's really good
companies
advice. That's great advice. Mm.
companies, you're right. I mean, I worked at a very large energy infrastructure company, and and what I saw was very typical, I think, of what I see now from the other side of many companies is that you're right. There's a lot of governance. There's a lot of people to convince to try something, and that is the number one thing that stops technology and innovation.
Yeah.
It's people and it's culture. And what a lot of companies have done, there's some great books out there on this to varying degrees of success, but the companies that you see that are quite innovative have actually sometimes taken the innovation team outside of the company, outside of the building, and they've kind of made them their own little startup, and they've fed them problems, right, without without all the overhang of the big mothership. And that's how
Mhm.
some companies are actually getting quite some success.
I have some guests on even where they've set up offices at co-working spaces where they were in a completely
Hmm.
different environment, so nothing could
That's
come
right.
in. And again, I think it's good to say that with a high degree of respect. Protecting the corporation, mitigating risk, HR, IT, like there's certain parts of that ship. I heard them respond as like pirates versus soldiers. If you have all
Hmm.
pirates, it's absolute chaos. But if you
That's
have all
right.
soldiers, like you need those pirates to go out and break things ethically, bend the rules,
Yeah.
push the boundaries, maybe not dress the same way, maybe not act the same way, maybe get a little rowdy on a
Hmm.
Friday night. Versus you've got aspects of that corporation that need to be governance oriented, privacy, security,
Absolutely.
sending people home safe. We live in a
That's right.
city where so many organizations are tied to individuals out in the field where you and I'm not going to lose an arm today. Like the odds of that
Nope.
happening in my world are beyond slim. I don't know
That's right.
I'm sure I could find some silly thing to do, but it wouldn't be work related. But when
Hmm.
you've got that out in the field, you can't be just throwing new things at everybody and mixing things up because it's actually dangerous environmentally and from a human perspective.
That's right. You've got to find a way to do it that balances all of those things for sure.
All right,
Absolutely.
so I've got an innovative team and they're off, and I'm feeding them
Hmm.
problems, and they actually come up with something that's they can show optically. They can run out a case. What happens when it comes back to the mothership? How does it not? In your experience, what can we do to increase the odds of it not
Yeah.
eating our young,
I,
not
lo-
eating it before it shows up?
I love this question because I'll tell you that, you see some very cool presentations at different conferences, keynote speeches or people from that we all know in town who've gone and they've sort of presented on some cool thing they've done with AI, right? And
Yeah.
typically people are the problems really break down into how do I deal with a scenario, the cascade effect. Something has gone wrong, a compressor station's broken down, a train isn't, operating the way it should, you name it, something's gone wrong. How do I very quickly uh, deal with that scenario? Or I've got constraints, right? Like I'm doing a rig move and there's only so many pieces of equipment that can be in a certain place at a certain time. And how do I optimize stuff like that? That's a lot of what you see as well as um, the productivity stuff on there. I forgot where I was going with that for a second.
While we're talking, and my comment, like everything you just talked about, was also existing in the physical world, where
Hmm.
AI still like you've got often technology and innovation exists in a computer. How does that then interchange and
Yeah,
influence in the physical world? And how do you take real problems on a Tuesday and dovetail them in with an innovation idea, concept, solution that now has just been floated in to the team that's just got to
right.
friggin' solve today's problem?
And I remember what I was going to say to you is that so those great interesting solutions that people have done that you see people present on, when you actually go have a coffee with them, they quietly tell you that they have not been able to scale it and they have not been able to get people to adopt it.
Haven't been able to get it off the
And
bench, right?
right. And that is the story, and it's why the executive teams are saying, look, how do we do this? What's real? Because they're seeing a lot of this. They're seeing a lot of excitement. We got a pilot. 90% of companies aren't getting out of pilot mode. They've got this cool
90%,
thing,
90%, 90%. Yeah.
90% plus,
So
right? And it's
what you're
like,
saying is you got to read the fine print.
you've got to ask questions, right? And you've got to
Yeah.
think. And again, usually it's because there's resistance within the organization. I think the way it changes, it's a little bit of the FOMO, unfortunately, right? It's like, looking
Mm.
across the street, people are, once people start doing something, and the energy industry is kind of bad, no one wants, in a lot of cases, wants to be the leader. Everyone wants to be the
I've heard
fast
there's a big
follower.
lineup. There's a big lineup to be second.
There's a big lineup for second. There's not a big lineup for first. So, someone's going to have to break through and do some of this stuff. And it goes back to that conversation before. Can you squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube in such a way that it can't go back in, right? The new way of doing things, it would be inconceivable to go back. And then you start to get
Isn't that
momentum.
Buckminster? Is that Buckminster Fuller? Like the best way to innovate or change something is just make a better way, because then people will by default. I think there's a quote that I probably just butchered, but
Well, and people are sick of the COVID analogies, but if you'll let me, I'll give you one, which is,
sure.
I remember, like a lot of companies, we had to get people home within, 12 hours, and everyone was up on Teams on a Monday morning. And it was kind of funny because, we got a lot of credit for, there was about 30 days there where IT was the hero. There were statues of us on all the street corners and everything.
Ticker tape parades, but
That's right. People
but everyone was
didn't
at
yell at us.
home.
That's right. No one yelled at us in the street anymore, and it was quite a glorious time to be in IT. But the funny part, the story I'd share, is that we got a lot of praise for rolling out this Teams tool in 24 hours, and what an incredible job. And I had to sort of, after I let the accolades kind of come in for a while, I had to self-confess and say, listen, you've actually had this tool for a year. I couldn't figure out, you wouldn't take the training, you wouldn't adopt it. I couldn't figure out how to get you to use it. COVID comes in and you're all experts in 24 hours, right? So my point is nothing moves without pressure, right?
Yes,
There has to be some event that's going to push you to the new way of doing things. Otherwise, human nature, we will stay where we are. Thank you very much.
How do you create a COVID-like pressure without blowing everything up? Like, that's a really interesting, but you're absolutely, I think about our organization. We sell
we don't
cultural.
Want any more COVID. No more COVID, please.
No.
But
I like what you said. The word pressure, I think, is very, necessity, the mother of all motivation. Like there was no choice. But we had no choice. Toronto office, right. Calgary office. We always had an us versus them culture. Within 2 weeks of COVID, that went away. I spent 5 years trying to break that, and I couldn't fix it, break it, whichever way you want to come at that. I tried it all, fix it, break it. Tools and Asana and Slack, and within a month, we're using all the tools like 60, 70% more than we were before. They were all there before.
Right. It was the great
Very
level
few of them were new tools.
Yeah, it was a great level. I had the same experience. I had leaders in 3 different cities, and the ones that were not in Calgary always used to feel quite left out. It was almost impossible to interject and have your voice heard. Well, Teams leveled all that, and so we actually carried on after COVID. Yeah. Did it on Teams forever.
We actually shut down both of our offices because the team that we ended up with were so good at it, and also they were willing to exchange the freedom for the extra comms, or the there's no such thing as over communicating when you're remote. You need to share all the details because they didn't overhear you at the water cooler. And if you're willing to accept that new paradigm for this freedom, and especially I had teams in Toronto that were commuting like an hour and a half each way, so like quality of life.
Absolutely.
But COVID did that. I didn't. Yeah. I cannot take any credit for that. It was COVID.
No, but I think that the lesson for companies is how do you create that sense of urgency, that sense of motion that we're moving, and bring people along, because people in COVID were, obviously we were all going through a tough time, but they were welcoming that new approach. They welcomed the fact that you could continue to work and people could continue to be employed. So how do you create that without COVID, but with something in your company that says it's going to be okay, right? And the typical answer I'd have for people, because I hate just leaving it, make it safe. And the way you make it safe from a change management is, how do I see myself in the future with this new thing? Am I on the street, or am I just, am I doing my job or a different job? In fact, I always use the example of when I, went to AWS, to the cloud. That had a massive change impact on people that used to rack and stack servers. And initially, as you'd expect, they were quite resistant. They were not big fans of mine when I decided that we were going to do this. What we did is, the teams opened up the ability to take any certification training on AWS that anyone wanted, and they could do it on company time for free. Within a few months, these same people started to realize, hold on a minute, this is a whole new skill set that I'm now going to have. And actually, he might have a hard time keeping me, because I've now got a very marketable skill set, and I'm now, my career's on a different trajectory. And a lot of these people, I won't tell you every single one, that would be a lie, but the vast majority came around to the point where they became the biggest advocates for going to the cloud.
How critical is that in the early days of an initiative, or or trying to identify friction, to get the the people that are actually belly to belly with the problem. And I had a
Yes.
couple
Yeah.
gentlemen on that, we did top down, digital transformation and completely blew it because we were imposing
Yeah.
things on people that go, is it like, come on, you barely know what I really do day to day, like that kind of mindset. And I've had a few, it sounds so obvious, but it seems like a mistake that can be easily made.
Absolutely. I would tell you one of my very first experiences in my, I was in my 20s, young and naive, first sort of job in the oil patch, and I was helping to create a digital field ticketing system, which for its time was really innovative. Like, it was using the internet and it was using kiosks out in the field. We didn't have iPads and stuff back then. And I honestly thought, Tyler, like, these people are gonna love me. Like, I am gonna be showered with hugs and all the rest of it. And you know where this is going. It was
I
not
do.
like that at all, right? And so super naive on my part, 100%. But you know, you have to understand and get in the mindset of what does this mean to them.
Yeah.
And so that's the human reaction. Like, what journey are you taking them on? I failed to do that. I just thought it was very, very cool. We're taking some old archaic paper process, we're turning it into electronic, and that's fantastic. Everyone's going to love it. And they did not.
I've heard it said, don't fall in love with the problem, fall in love with the customer's version of the problem.
That's right.
Versus, I
That's
love
right.
it. I'm solving this huge thing. And I had a couple
Yeah.
startup founders on,
Yeah.
like, we did everything, but oh shit, we didn't calculate that it's cold environment and they have to operate our equipment with
That's right.
mitts on. And we didn't make it for mitts. We made it for the executive
right.
team who wanted to say that they had a carbon displacement. And we literally solved the wrong problem for the wrong group. So our unit would go on site and it would get stuck in the corner of the warehouse because no one wanted to use it.
meet people where they're at.
Yeah. Yes. Well, good circle all the way back. What's the most exciting problem you're working on right now to solve for a client? Nameless, faceless, but what's the thing that is like, wow, okay, this is interesting. We're doing something cool here.
I think one of the coolest things and one of the most promising things is definitely the agentic AI, right? And I know people within the company here who actually have, they spend their weekends geeking out, creating their own little agents that manage their email, their personal email and their personal calendars.
Back to that playtime at home, right? In your own sandbox.
That's right.
Sandbox, yeah.
And I think that is, where the workplace is going to go over the next 5-10 years, is that it will become very normal to sit at our desks like you and I are right now and have a sort of little small army, if you like, of helpers that are little agentic AI agents that can, and we're already starting to see this. We've got an HR one, a really good one actually here that I can ask it. I'm like, well, how many hours do I have left for, vacation? And it'll bing, there you go. I don't have to log into a tool and search for and click tabs and all this stuff. So finding information is getting a lot easier in many companies because you've got these agents, little chatbots usually, that know where to go. But what you're going to have is helpers that they start to become deeply integrated and learn about you. And so when you ask them to write an email, they'll use your style. They've studied you and they'll do it. And you'll be like, wow, did I write that? Well, you didn't, but you kind of did, because the agent actually knows all about you. And it knows your routines. It knows which days you like to work from home. And it knows how long your commute is and how difficult it's going to be for you to get from A to B when it manages your calendar. And I think that's where this is going to go. And again, we're going to have to embrace this as being, okay, it's going to free me up to do something else. What is that something else?
Yeah.
I'd encourage people to think of it this way. What are all the things I wish I had more time for every day? And what would I happily get rid of?
That's a fun place to start. Back to what are we really solving for? Like, create that list. And then you get the reward of doing more of said thing by taking those extra time to like invest only a little bit to automate a thing. And boom, that's what I got, which is what I was dreaming about having. That's a fun little exercise to do on the corner of your desk. That might take, and like, that's a multi-year project to think about.
And when your boss asks you for a perspective on something, what do you think about X? And you might go back to your desk in the past, kind of sweating about where do I even start? Open up ChatGPT and ask it. Now be careful. I mean, everyone's talked about the hype. What do they call it? The when it comes up with fake data. Sorry, the words escaping.
And tells you how pretty and smart you are at the same time.
That's right. Yeah,
Great question. You're amazing. I'm like, yes, I don't need this. This is not helping. Stop it.
I have programmed it to say that to me every morning and tell me how great I am. But in all
looking,
seriousness,
gosh darn it, people like me.
What a great starting point. You can even ask it, how would I get started with answering this question? And again, people get worried, I'm cheating. It's always going to be your work. You're going to have to go back and speak to it from a place of knowledge, right? But it can help you get started. And I find that I use that every day as how do I get started thinking about this problem? And it will come up with a bunch of stuff that I know about. And I go, oh, right, yeah, I'm going to talk about these things.
To your point, 5, 10 years ago, oh, you just looked that up on the internet. No one would ever
Hmm.
call you out for looking.
No.
Again, why wouldn't you use the internet?
Yeah.
Like we're
We
going
called
to
it
move through.
research.
We're going to move through that. It's like you
We
listen
are.
to an audiobook and you say, I read a book. Well, I'll be clear. I didn't really read it. I listened to it. Is
That's
that less
right.
valuable because I put in less work? What are we talking about here? It's such a
Yeah, I went
funny
I went on
dichotomy.
Blinkist and I listened to the summary. Like, does that make it less valuable? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Should I get less credits for reading
Yeah.
books? I don't know. But you're right. We're kind of moving through that, I think, and that'll quickly become normalized. And maybe
Hmm.
that's just you and I talking. There's probably a whole generation that wouldn't even think twice about what we're talking about right now.
I think that's the reality. That's going to happen very quickly.
It's an exciting, it's an exciting journey to be on. I appreciate looking at some of the shiny bits, but also really talking about the overwhelm and the reality.
Hmm.
But like anything that you get overwhelmed by, sometimes it's taking stock and just putting it in a place and not letting it. The story can sometimes. Our minds are very good at telling us stories that are maybe not helping us out versus going, okay, yeah, this is amazing. And yes, but I still have to do my day to day and I still live in this world. Let's carve out a little bit of time and let's push that over here. Mhm.
That's right. Yeah. And I think when we start to look at that, I mean, like we've talked a lot about being overwhelmed. If you can find the positives, you can find the things where it's going to free you up, you can find the things that you'll be able to do better, you can start to embrace this as something that can be good.
Yeah, and find ways that it actually is relatable and relevant to
Hmm.
your world. To pick a hobby, something you like about, and then just go ask it about what might someone in my position with this many years experience not know about this hobby, and kind of weird questions
Right.
like that. It
Yeah.
blows your mind what it comes back with
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, remember the more you tell it about what it is you're looking for, the better answer you'll get, and you can use it every weekend. You've got some project you're doing in your garage or your garden. You'd be amazed what it can tell you.
100%. Last question, and I didn't prep you on this one. Any resources or places, besides just go to ChatGPT? Is there
Hmm.
anything that you made the comment about, like, shit, how do I stay on top of it? Because I've got to stand in front of clients, being you, and go, let me tell you what you should care about and not care about. Is there any resources or any kind of trusted outside of the AI itself that you use as kind of reference points for credibility?
Um, I would say a lot of it. I follow quite a few people on LinkedIn, and I
Okay.
watch what they're saying. So you can see a lot of people on there who'll post kind of what's the latest capabilities with Gemini, because everyone talks about ChatGPT, but there's actually a lot of different, obviously,
Hmm.
tools out there. And what's starting to happen, you've got ChatGPT for your regular prompts, but obviously if you actually dip under the surface, and now it's all free, it's not even part of the premium offering, there's all these chat gpt apps, and they're starting to create apps that do everything. So you need a new resume, well, there's an app that can build you that. You want to create a LinkedIn post, it can do that for you, right? So I think for people, I would say to people, you're never going to keep up. um, Subscribe, find a few voices on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever that you like, that are sort of at the level you're interested in. Subscribe to them and just get curious. If you find time in your schedule, once a week, twice a week, to just go try some of this stuff, right? Like, if you listen to this podcast, go try Notebook LM if you haven't done it yet. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I
I
promise
would
you,
recommend
5 minutes.
that's a good action takeaway from this call, because
Yeah.
no matter what, it'll make you go, whoa, wow, holy heck. I like what you
Yeah.
said though, like find people that are speaking at your level, because you can dive into some rabbit holes and all of a sudden it can almost make you feel alienated because it's too complex. But there's every tier, just like any hobby or any level of tractor maintenance. You can meet, it
Absolutely.
has to meet you where you're at, and I think finding the right sources also helps you go on the journey without feeling less overwhelmed.
Yeah, and find something that you're curious about, right? Maybe you've heard someone say, "Oh, you can write an agent to help you with your email." Or there's some part of your life like, okay, so make it useful for you. If I were to go research this and find out how could AI help me schedule my kids' activities, right? Or how could it help me figure out what to plant in the garden because I don't want to put things next to each other that might clash with each other. Whatever your thing is, make it fun, because then you'll actually be interested. And when you get the results, of course, you're much more engaged.
Yeah, I love it. It's become, it's kind of superseded the internet for recipes, because recipe sites are annoying. But man, ChatGPT has become this amazing cooking, almost
That's
sous
right.
chef. It won't chop the vegetables for me, but it really tell me what
yet.
vegetables
Not
I should
yet.
cook in which order.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
robot is coming, but we're not in a rush for that. We'll take our time. Chris, obviously you're at Accenture. If someone wants to reach out, obviously I know you're on LinkedIn. You're prevalent on there. Is that a preferred format for you? Is hit you up on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or?
LinkedIn's always good, or it's pretty easy to figure out how to email me. It's chris.foster@accenture.com, so easy to remember. So always happy. Like, I know you said, I said it before, you said Calgary, you were one coffee away from a
Yep.
new idea or a new person. And you made the comment I loved, which was in Calgary, people will actually go for the coffee and introduce you to
They
people.
will.
And that's been my experience, and it's certainly been my experience, if people want to chat.
Amazing. Chris, thanks for coming on. Really good to see you again, my friend, and good to have a good catch up. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for always being a fun interview.
Well, I'm humbled you'd invite me back. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it.
Well, now the door is open. It's just a matter. It's just a matter not if, but when. Now.
I'll see you after your 1,000th episode.
100%. Well, I will. Yes, I look forward to seeing you at the event.
There you go.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.